Hi, welcome to Calc 3 for Summer Session 2. I am Professor Forte. This video will give you an introduction to the course, sort of like what you might find on the first day of class in person. We'll sort of walk through the syllabus. I'll show you where everything is on Canvas so that you know where things are when you go to take the course. And then also an opportunity for you to see my face, to see that there really is somebody on the other end of that computer monitor as you're typing things into Canvas and taking tests and getting email responses. Here I am. Maybe over the summer I'll get an opportunity to match up a name with your face, either on campus or through Zoom, one of our help sessions perhaps. So yes, here we are, Summer Session 2. Let me share my screen. We'll take a little walk through the introduction to Calc 3. So if you made it to the welcome video, I assume you've made it onto Canvas. So this is our main part of our course on Canvas. You notice if you've never used Canvas before that each of these modules is collapsible. So if they all happen to be open when you first open Canvas, it looks like an enormous amount of stuff. But, make it a little bit easier on yourself. Close them up until you're ready to use them. The couple of things you'll see on my screen may not look exactly like yours. This is still a week or more before the course opens, and so I'm still going to move some things around and fill some things in. For example, the intro video from last year will be replaced with this intro video from this year. You'll notice there's a link to the syllabus here. I'll go through the syllabus in a little bit. This syllabus and course information is just sort of a repository of all different kinds of things that you might need as the semester goes on. We will use Wolfram Alpha as our sort of Mathematica tool, and there is a link for that as well. There is an orientation to My Math Lab that's optional. You may have already used My Math Lab by the time you get to Calc 3, but if you haven't, it'll walk you through some ways to enter answers and such. Withdrawal and refund schedules, that's just a college-wide thing. And a tutoring center. So, I am around for questions and things like that. I also have another class that I teach on campus, so if our hours don't happen to match up or you want some additional help beyond office hours and such, we do have a tutoring center on campus, and that information is available there. Up at the top is a course information and welcome message. So a lot of what's in there is also included in this video, but if you want to see it in written form, one of the things that's helpful is you see this thing that says raritanval.instructure.com. That's a way to link to Canvas directly. And don't tell anybody, but that's the way that you get into Canvas without having to do that multi-factor authentication. So when you go into the Lion's Den, it'll make you enter the numbers and punch this and that. When you do it that way, it'll get you right into Canvas, and then you just put in your username and password, and you're good. Right, a lot of the rest of the stuff is all stuff that's included in this video. Anytime you want to get back to the modules, you just hit the home button, and it'll take you back. So each of the weekly modules I tried to set up consistently with an overview at the beginning. The first week overview has a lot of information because it's the first time you're interacting with the course, but it'll get a lot shorter as the weeks go by. I've recorded lectures for each of the videos, for each of the sections. They're kind of like this, where you'll hear my voice, you'll see the screen, but you won't necessarily see me, which is fine. You don't need to. The videos correspond to PowerPoint, so you'll see me working through PowerPoints. These are the PowerPoints that I used in the creation of the videos. And so if you're somebody who likes to either print out or download the PowerPoints and follow along and work out the problems as I'm working them out on the video, that might be helpful. Sometimes you'll look through the PowerPoints and see that I don't go through every single thing on there. I leave a little bit for you to read through those PowerPoints and fill in a couple of definitions now and then. But they're all listed here. You're certainly welcome to download them as you work through the videos, but those are PowerPoints that I made along with the videos. Then down the bottom is all the stuff that's graded. So I have a section for discussions and online homework. The first discussion is due on Tuesday night. That's the introduction. So you go in, there's some directions, post your introduction by the end of the day on Tuesday. The first academic type discussion is on vectors and dot products, and that's due on Wednesday night. So you open it up, fill out the answers to the questions, write in full sentences and so forth, explain things, and then you won't see other people's posts until you post something yourself. So I'm expecting that you're going to post a complete response, that you're not just going to post a couple words so you can see everybody else's. Yes, I know how that works. So post a complete response. And then if you happen to be reading other people's responses and you see something that's kind of interesting, you might leave a little response. Hey, that looks kind of interesting. Thanks for posting that. I like the way you organize things, etc. The homework will take you to the My Math Lab, or as we call it, Access Pearson. So you see on this link over here, it says Access Pearson. So you open up Access Pearson. The first time you do this, you'll get something like this that says, do you want to open it? Yes. You will get a different looking screen. I've already synced up the course, but you'll get a screen asking you to log into a Pearson account. So if you have a Pearson account, whether it's for math or for any other subject, put your username and password in, and it'll log you into Pearson. Once you do that, it'll automatically link up with the course. So you'll notice that eventually I take a look at the syllabus, I say there's no MyMathLab ID. Years ago, I mean, the course does have an ID, but if you search for the ID separately from the Canvas course, then none of your grades are going to transfer. So please don't do that. Go in through Canvas, click on the Access Pearson link, and then that will take you into my course, and it'll automatically generate a link between the Canvas course and the MyMathLab course. Once you've established that link, then anytime you want to complete an assignment, you can go in through Canvas, click on that assignment, and it'll bring everything up. You notice that because I've already set up the course, it's got the due dates already on the bottom, right? So you'll see that's due on July 9th, the next was July 13th, and so forth. So I organize them a week at a time. If you want access to the textbook, and when you open the MyLab Mastering, it opens up the back end of MyMathLab. One of the things it says here is eText contents. So when you open that up, you get two choices. There's a mobile and accessible eText, so if you're reading this on a tablet or maybe a computer that's a little bit slower, it has everything, it just doesn't have it in like the nice neat pages of a textbook that the other version has. Over here, it says the eText that mirrors your textbook. So when you open that up, it'll open up something that looks like a textbook. Okay. Horizontal bars in the top left opens up a table of contents. This calculus book covers Calc 1, 2, and 3. So we're a little bit down the road here, right? We're well past reviewing functions and limits. That's Calc 1, that's Calc 2. Here we are in Calc 3. So you open that up and look at that. Now it looks like a textbook. So if somebody references a specific page, here it is on page 804. If you're looking for page 855, you can actually just type in 855, and it brings us to a lot of questions on a lot of questions. This is the end of 13.5, and then this actually opens up 13.6. 13.6 is the section with all the cool pictures. Right? So if you look through the calc book, maybe you were in Calc 1, you're like, what's way further ahead? Well, that's this section on all the cool graphs of the ellipsoids and the hyperbolic paraboloids and the elliptical paraboloids. And we'll actually learn how to use those and how to make the equations for them, right? So, and then at the end of this textbook is the stuff you would assume, the appendix. There's a table of integrals at the very end. So that's how you can access MyMathLab through, access the textbook through MyMathLab. Okay. What else is in here that's interesting? There are labs. What is a lab? Well, it's like a problem set that you work on, write out on paper, and then submit it. So there is a Lab 0, which is the Intro to Mathematica. If you're coming from another school, or maybe in a course here at Raritan Valley, you've used Mathematica for something, then you're already familiar with it. Mathematica was the AI of like 15 years ago, and they've continued to upgrade it and upgrade it and upgrade it as time goes on, to the point where now the free online version is as powerful as the paid version was just a couple of years ago. And so this intro just asks you to type in a few basic commands and to get a feel of how Mathematica works. Okay. The first lab will ask you to actually use it. And so you notice in the directions it says include a scan of your Mathematica work. So sometimes what happens when you type in the commands, it gives you like 7 different versions of the answer. There's one that will obviously make sense in the context of what we're doing. So if we're working with vectors that are two-dimensional, don't look at like the surface answers and stuff like that, and so forth. So just take screenshots of those, throw them in along with your work, and submit everything in one organized Word or PDF file. And it's set up to not accept images because certain images don't work on Canvas and they don't work on my computer. So it would be silly for me to accept images that I know I can't read and I can't access. So submit it in Word or PDF form. All right, so when you open the lab, you notice that it has probably some new directions, right? How to enter some things that we might not have done before. In this case is things like adding vectors, dot products, cross products. And so it says, do the following exercises both by hand and also using Mathematica. So it's up to you. If you're taking an online course, maybe you're a little bit more tech savvy, you can work on a tablet and you can write out the work on the tablet and then just insert the image of the Mathematica verifications underneath. So some people will do like all 8 of them, or all 9 of them, I guess here, and do all the handwritten work first and then put the Mathematica work in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Some people put work Mathematica. It's up to you. Play around with it a little bit. They ask you to sketch the surfaces by hand. I'm not looking for like works of art that go in a museum. I just want an idea that you know what this looks like. And then notice it says for the Mathematica, use Plot 3D. Use that command to get these surfaces. And then I'm going to ask you at the end to give me like a short couple of sentence summary that summarizes what did you learn in this lab. Was there something interesting? Is there something you've seen before that now makes a little bit more sense? Or do you say, this is the first lab, it's pretty simple. I like simple labs, right? Tell me something. And then you're going to submit it. So you're going to go in, you're going to upload your file. When you scan in your work, if you're going to do it by hand, please scan it in and then check to make sure it's legible. Check to make sure you're writing dark enough on that piece of paper and that your scanner settings are such so that you're taking pictures in such a way that I can read it. Okay, don't make it like real grayed out or real tiny that it's very hard to read. I need to be able to read these, and you don't want me to miss work. You don't want to come back and say, "Oh, I had the work. It was just you couldn't see it." Well, that doesn't help. So please make things as legible as possible. Double check the file before you submit it. Make sure all the pages are there. They're in the right order. And then when you submit it to Canvas, again, open up the file and just make sure that everything is there, right? And that's one reason not to wait until like 11:58 at night if it's due at 11:59. Upload it early enough that you get the time to look at it. And if all the pages didn't come through or all the, the work is a little blurry or whatever, you have an opportunity to fix that rather than waiting until a minute before it's due. And then I find out the next day when I go to grade it that only half the problems are there, which we don't want. Right? So take the time to double check your work, check your scans. If you want to work with somebody else on the lab, that's perfectly fine. You'll submit one lab for both of you, put your names on it, both of your names on it. So one person will submit the lab, and then when I see that the lab has two names on it, then the other person, I'll insert the grade in there. The comments will be left on whoever's lab that's whoever submits the lab. And so usually what I'll do when I go to grade it is Canvas has these little blue buttons, so I'll leave you a little blue mark, and sometimes I'll say this question is wrong, I'll give a couple of points off or whatever, but sometimes I'll just leave a comment like rationalized denominators or something like that, if that happens to be the case. So check for those comments too, because sometimes those comments are like, hey, I'm not going to take any points off this time, but just so you know, this is how I expect it. And so if I leave a comment the first lab and the second lab by the third lab, I might be taking points off for that. So please go into the grade book. Once I tell you, grades are posted, go into the grade book, open the document, and see what comments I have. It may be fantastic work, great job, and that's all I have to say, and you got 100 on it. That's a good outcome too. All right, so that's what those labs are. So I tend to set up the weeks the same way, right? So you notice in week 2, there's a little overview, the videos, the PowerPoint notes, here's your discussions, the homework, the labs, a review, because there's a test on week 2. Right now, tests are taken on campus in the testing center. If anything changes between now and the beginning of the summer session, I will update you through announcements. But as of this video recording, everything is still taken on paper in the testing center. So you open up this link, and it tells you testing center Thursday or Friday. Testing center closes 6 o'clock Thursday, 4:30 on Friday. So you got a 2-hour test. Don't come like 2:29 on Thursday, because if everybody comes at the same time, it's going to take them a while to check everybody in. They're asking you to make appointments, so you click on that link. It'll bring you to a calendar, put in the date and time you want. It'll give you like a 5-minute window, but that's just the 5 minutes to register when you get there. You'll need a picture ID, right? So I said bring a picture ID. Bring a scientific calculator, no graphing calculators, and obviously some pencils and erasers. And when it comes down the bottom, it'll ask you what kind of test you're going to take. Choose faculty exam, and then if it asks for my name, then type in my name. Forte is how you spell it. If you want information about testing hours, I put the testing center link over there too for you to do it. So at the beginning of week 2, log in, make yourself an appointment. It helps the testing center staff to know how many people are coming. If they see that multiple faculty members are all giving tests on the same couple of days and that there's a lot of appointments made, then they might ask, they have a couple of part-time people, they might ask them to come in for the day to help out. If everybody just all shows up at once, then that makes it a little bit harder, not only for them, but for you who has to wait in line. So making those appointments just kind of gives them a heads up that, Thursday there's going to be a lot of people in here. Let's make sure we have enough staff. All right, so then each of these kind of work the same way, right? There's no test in week 3, there's a test in week 4. Right, there's your test number 2. There's a test in week 5, and then week 6 has the final exam in it. So week 6 has the new material, and then you notice that I have a separate module for the final. That's the one thing I haven't done yet, is I haven't put the rest of the final exam stuff together, but over the course of the semester I will. You'll see the final exam like holding place for it, but I haven't put up the review stuff yet. But I will. There will be review stuff coming for the final. All right, let's take a look at the syllabus. The syllabus has basic course information. All right, it's Calc 3, Summer 2025. There's my name. Best way to contact me is using Canvas email, which is nice because you're already on Canvas. So the Canvas email tool is relatively simple to use. It's that little thing that says inbox. Especially in Summer Session 2, I don't always check that Rared and Val email. Right? Summer Session 2 tends to be a little bit quieter, not as many people on campus, not as many jobs and things coming in through Outlook, so I tend to focus on the Canvas email. So for the fastest response, use that inbox. So click on that inbox here. I'm going to see if I can push this off the screen. I don't want you to see everybody's emails, because if I click on that and don't move this, you're going to see everybody else's emails. Yes, okay. So what you don't see is on the left bar, there is a set of emails, and it tells me like, how many conversations and so forth. You click on compose, and it says compose message. So select the course. So we're going to select Calculus 3, and then who is it to? You've got a choice. Do you want to send it to everybody? Probably not. Do you want to send it to the teacher? That's a possibility. You can also send it to other students in the class. So if you're working on a lab with somebody and you want to make sure they see the message, send it through Canvas, because chances are they're going to log into Canvas. Right. The other thing you notice that's up on the top is it says RVCC student resources. At one point, we used to hand out these syllabi that were like 10, 12 pages long, and half the information was outdated. So now you click on RVCC student resources, and it comes up to a page that is maintained by the college. And so I don't have to worry about updating the information every year. It should be updated. Now, some of this stuff doesn't apply to us as much in an online course, and maybe if you're a visiting student, you don't need information so much about advising and transfer, but like at some point you're going to want to take, if you're a visiting student, you're going to want to take the credits and transfer it back to your school. So you may need to interact with somebody in advising or admissions to help you to do that. Mental health and personal counseling, that could be important to you. This is a set of resources and information. We have a Center for Accessibility and Inclusive Education, so if you need things like testing accommodations, make sure to go there, right? This is the information. Get the documentation and get it to me early in the semester, because, boy, these 6-week summer sessions move fast. So don't wait until like week 2 or 3. We do have a tutoring center on campus. I'd mentioned that they had that PDF on the first module. They have a whole website you can check out. Other things, like if you need information about the testing center, there's another way to get there. And so there's things down here like the delayed opening policy. Well, delayed opening, we're not going to get snow in the middle of July. I understand that. But it's possible that we could have a power outage on campus on a day when you're going to take a test. And so make sure that you're signed up for those alerts from the college. And obviously I'll post something on Canvas to remind you and pass that information along, but you might get it faster if you get an alert from the college, because usually that's how I get the information myself. So other things about like withdrawing from a course, if you realize that this course is too much, how do you actually withdraw from the course, incomplete grades, and so forth. So all of that is in that RVCC student resources, and then this way I don't have to put all that information on the syllabus, and it's updated for you. All right, so that's what this is, student resources. Office hours over the summer, especially summer 2, we don't have fixed office hours, but generally you drop me an email if there's something that you want to go over. Sometimes we can do it by email. Sometimes, we do it on Zoom, or like I said, I'm on campus teaching an evening course 4 days a week, and so we might just meet on campus depending on what works for us. All the syllabi are supposed to have the department chair's name and contact information, so there it is. Information about the textbook. I showed you where it is on my math lab, and if you already used the book for Calc 1 or Calc 2 here, and you have the life of the edition, then you don't need to buy a new access code. If you only bought the 18-week, then you probably do need another access code. Unless you did something like if you took Calc 2 in summer session 1 and you bought the 18-week code, I think you can slide in there and get another 6 weeks out of it for summer 2. So that's a nice advantage of those summer courses. Technology, it just reminds you that my math lab and Mathematica and Desmos are online. You can use graphing calculators on labs, but for tests, only a scientific calculator. No graphing calculators. So I mentioned there's no My Math Lab course ID. Get in there through Canvas. There's your learning outcomes, grading policies, 3 tests, homework. Talked a little bit about discussion posts before. I'm calling them paper labs, even though you're submitting them online. And then a cumulative final exam. So the homework closes at a certain time. You'll see those due dates on the syllabus. You'll see them in Canvas and on My Math Lab. So it closes at 11:59. And so you've really got to keep up on those dates and times, because I'm not going to open them and extend deadlines and things. Unless it's something big like you were in an accident and you were in the hospital for a couple days, and I might ask for some sort of a note or something. And in that case, then yes, we'll work on a plan to get you back in. But you really have to keep up on top of those dates. The same thing with labs, right? Labs are due when they're due. Discussions, I talked about coming up with tests on campus. And again, summer session, I get those tests back pretty quickly. So day and a half, they're back. So it becomes very hard to do makeup tests, because once I get the test back and start discussing the answers, then I can't give you a test that's different, or give you a test that everybody else has already taken. That's not fair. Talked about students with learning disabilities. So this is a summary of the course, and I tried to put it all in 2 pages in a nice table format so you can see what's due when and sort of cross things off the list. The homework and everything is open on the first day of class, so if you have a little time the first week, it might not be bad to get yourself like a day ahead. This way, if something happens, last minute, emergency in family, or you feel sick or something like that, or, an opportunity comes up to go down the shore with some friends or something like that, then at least you're a day ahead, maybe 2 days ahead, and you don't have to worry about racing, beat the clock to try to make the homework get due. So I put the first discussion, lab 0 is not collected. So all these things in this last column are due at the end of that day. So at the end of Wednesday, the first My Math Lab is due. The second discussion, which is really the first big discussion on vectors and dot products, is due. I put some homework assignments due on Sunday nights, figuring that if you had a busy week and you wanted the weekend to kind of catch up a little bit, you could do that. You also notice the homework is due a couple days after it's assigned in class. So like we did 13-6 on Wednesday, I don't have the homework due until Sunday night. Give you a chance to work through it and ask some questions. Now, if you're going to be away weekends and stuff like that, then certainly finish up the homework by Thursday, Friday night, and then you got your weekend free, right? So I never put new material in over the weekend, but sometimes I do extend those assignments a couple of days so that you can work on them over the weekend and catch up a little bit, right? The same thing's true after the first test, right? The first test, Thursday or Friday. We've already covered the beginning of chapter 15, and so I put that homework there on a Sunday night. So if you look at the way this is structured, the first unit is all vectors. It's kind of a little bit of where you left off at the end of Calc 2. So we have things like dot products and cross products. Some of these things, if you've taken like linear algebra, you might have already done some of this stuff. Then we get into the 2 big units after that are essentially the 3-dimensional version of Calc 1. So in Calc 1, you studied what? You studied limits, you studied derivatives, chain rules, product rules, quotient rules. Well, instead of like tangent lines, now we have tangent planes. Instead of max-min problems being based on one variable, now they're based on more than one variable. But a lot of it is the same idea with just different procedures. Then, what did you do after you got done studying derivatives? You studied integrals. Well, if single integrals will take care of integration for one variable, now you're going to be doing double integrals and triple integrals. And instead of integrating with respect to a single variable and something that's linear, you're going to be integrating over a region. So it could be a rectangular region, it could be something defined by polar coordinates. Eventually we get to things like Jacobians and change of variables. That's like the 3-dimensional version of U substitution. Right, then the last unit is vector fields, and we get the Green's theorem and so forth. There's no separate test on that last unit in chapter 17. I thought it would be a little bit much to ask you to come in like Monday to take a test and then Wednesday to take the final exam. So the material from chapter 17 will be included in the final, but it will not be tested separately. And then for the final, I gave you 2 days options. Right? You could take it on Wednesday or Thursday. And again, if you want to take it a little bit earlier, you could take it on Wednesday. Just make sure it's done by 6 o'clock on Thursday night. And like the other test, you'll have 2 hours for the final exam. All right, a couple other little things on the side over here. The syllabus just gives you another way to see the syllabus. So here, I'll put it in as a student. you'll get the link to the syllabus up there, but then you'll also get sort of a day-by-day summary of what's due. And so you can see. I tried to portion it out a little bit, so that 5 things aren't due on one day and then nothing's due for the next 3 or 4 days. So it does seem like there's something due every day. A lot of times there's something for me to grade every day. But at least it's not that overwhelming pile of stuff that comes up right before a test. So that was my philosophy when I set things up. There's also a link for announcements. I will post announcements on a somewhat regular basis. Sometimes it's something as simple as, I've graded the first lab. Here's some feedback on it, some answers to things. Sometimes if there's a very involved discussion, I might post the work that I did after it's due so that you can see what I did for it, and it helps me to make the comments a little bit clearer as I grade them. Sometimes the announcements will be regarding a test or something like that. But there is a way on the Canvas app because there's a Canvas student app if you haven't downloaded it, to allow for push notifications, which you can do from your account, right? From your account up here, you can check on notifications and allow for push notifications for announcements. And then this way you see if something pops up, right? Every once in a while, something happens on campus. A fire alarm goes off or something and, interrupts things. And so I might send you an announcement regarding that. Other times it'll simply be reminders about things that are coming up in the week. I try not to overdo the announcements, but please make sure you read those announcements because that's the primary way that I'm going to communicate with you. The grade section obviously includes your grades. One thing about my math lab, you'll work through the problems when the assignment closes. Then at some point the next day, I will transfer those grades over to Canvas. So if you don't see the grades right away, don't panic. That just means I'm in the process of transferring them over. Once I put the grades in, you'll see, and then just double check to make sure everything matches up. They had a new system. I think they've worked most of the kinks out of the system, so we're in pretty good shape. But if you notice anything that doesn't match up, then just let me know and I'll check on that. Other than that, I think I've given you a good walk through the course and through the Canvas and how to find anything. If there's questions that you have after you've watched this, drop me an email. And if you're on campus, especially evenings, my class starts at 6 o'clock in summer session too. So stop by the office, say hi. It'll be good to meet you.